well as maximize access, as well as maximize access to school-based and community-based resources. So school social workers are expected to possess advanced knowledge and technical skills to guide their practice in these three areas. There are a variety of factors that influence the percentage of time school social workers allocate to these different roles. The most obvious factor is, of course, the ratio of a full-time social worker equivalent to how many students they serve, right? So, excuse me, SWA really advocates for all of these practices and key constructs to really work in this model and be implemented effectively. A full-time social worker is required, and SWA defines that as approximately a 1 to 250 school social worker to student ratio. I'm just going to take a sip of water real quick. I'm in Arizona, and we have all of our trees are blooming right now, and the allergies are something else. So when I say the 1 to 250 school social worker to student ratio, really what I'm saying is one full-time, 40 hours a week school social worker to 250 general education students, right? So that estimate, it varies depending on a lot of factors, such as the percentage of high-risk students. So the school that I'm located at, we have 2 self-contained classrooms. So those classrooms and those students aren't necessarily defined as, a general education classroom. So that ratio might need to be looked at a little bit different. It also depends on the experience and expertise of the school social worker, as well as the availability of other services, both in the school and in the community. So any other factors that might affect the job description of the school social worker might be the priorities or expectations of that particular school or district. So just highlighting some key constructs. Each social work practice is supported by a lot of historical scholarship and research that delineates this specialized, unique form of professional social work. So these are the key constructs that are infused into our practice. The first is the home, school, and community linkages. Academic achievement and behavior are profoundly impacted by the environment, including relationships and interactions at home, at school, and in the community. So facilitating communication and promoting linkages across those systems is a central characteristic of school social work practice. There's a lot of work between working with community agencies, working with the family, providing, some brief family therapy. There's so much of this interlinking going on. The next one, ethical guidelines and educational policy. School social workers follow professional ethical guidelines, and carry out federal and state educational policy to provide the highest level of school social work practice. The NASW Code of Ethics, as well as the SWA Ethical Guideline Series, again, defines what those expectations are for ethical school social work practice. School social work literature also facilitates accountability by promoting the use of an ethical decision-making model when applying laws, policies, and codes to specific school dilemmas. And there certainly is quite a bit of dilemmas going on between the practice of school social work and state and regional laws right now throughout our country. The Code of Ethics emphasizes the need for continuous professional development to keep aware of evidence-based practices in the field, reflection on evidence-based practices to really ensure that they fit in the context and culture of the school setting, right? So it's really important to make sure whatever evidence-based practices you're using where you're located might be completely different from what is culturally appropriate for maybe, you know, a middle school or an elementary school in Tucson, Arizona, right? Educational rights and advocacy. So school social workers address the ways in which structural inequalities in school processes affect school quality as well as educational outcomes. We as practitioners are expected to raise issues of diversity and social and economic justice that lead to school failure and educational disparities. We also should be able to balance our mandate as school employees to advocate for students and families with our mandate as social workers to help change policies and practices that undermine the dignity and worth of our students. And lastly, data-based decision-making. We use the best current research to design and implement a wide array of interventions. School social work services need to be informed by research, adapted empirically supported interventions to fit student needs, and we also need to routinely evaluate the effectiveness of policies, programs, and practices. So that was quite a bit. Again, just kind of, this is all some more, I guess, intense information on our values, our ethics, the model that we are supposed to stand or reflect our practice off of. So I wanted to kind of briefly highlight that before I move into the next part, just talking about SWA as an organization and our student membership. But before I do, I'll stop sharing just for a bit and ask if there were any questions before we move on. Oh, I saw Austin's comment of 1 to 250 would have been amazing. Yes. I have yet to meet a school social worker who has a ratio of 1 to 250. Exactly. I do have a colleague who is working with about 1 to 300. So that's the closest I've ever seen. And we at SWA do a lot of advocating and work and push towards ensuring that there's legislation and funding available to get closer and closer to that 1 to 250 ratio. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know they're making a big push for the school counselors here in Oklahoma to get closer to the appropriate numbers. So maybe once they get set up, school social workers will get the same.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That is our hope. And being able to be at a school in conjunction with a counselor and having multiple mental health professionals is such a huge asset. The school that I'm at now, or the district that I'm in, we only hire counselors for elementary and high school because it's much more, their role is targeted more towards continuing education, or I shouldn't say continuing education, higher education, whereas social workers are more, you know, on the ground doing all the things that I had just discussed. But yes, having all of those together is so important. All right, so let me go ahead and, all right. So now with just a little overview, I want to go over SWA as an organization and the benefits of student membership, if you're interested. I know there are some people joining us today that may not be students, so hopefully this will also be of interest and helpful for you too. So this is our main website here. We have quite a bit of resources that are available to the public. So even if you know, membership is out of reach for you, there are still a lot of resources available. Of course, this year was a very difficult back to school kind of year. So we provided a bunch of free resources focused on health and safety, getting back to school, back into the classroom, making sure our students felt safe, comfortable, as well as our staff and families. Along with that, a lot of course, COVID-19 resources. During the initial shutdown, we put out a lot of resources just on bringing school social work onto an online platform that was, of course, very new to everyone, but of course also to school social workers. So, excuse me. So a lot of information here on this page. Again, a lot of free resources. We try to, we are, of course, a member organization, and the things that we do, such as advocacy and legislation, of course, we need financial resources in order to do those things. So we are a member organization, but we do put a lot of effort into making quality free resources available to everyone. So just to go over really quick, so student members, we have our own page for student members. If you want to take a look at that, just goes over briefly the benefits that I'm going to show you. But we have a tiered membership at SWA. We provide, as you can see kind of over in this right-hand corner, we have basic, full, and premier. Basic is $40 a year, very doable. And the biggest benefit to basic membership is you get professional malpractice insurance. So what I didn't know when I started out as a school social worker, well, which I kind of knew, but didn't fully understand insurance, right? Is that yes, I do have liability insurance under my district, but when push comes to shove, who is the district going to be protecting? Themselves, right? So it's really important to think about getting your own professional malpractice liability insurance, and this is provided with that. So that's basic, and that's at $40 a year. Students, you are given the same benefits as Premier. So if you join SWA as a student, you are joining for half the price. Premier benefits cost $150 for a year, but as a student, it is $75, and you get all the same benefits as a Premier member would, right? And I'll kind of dive into a little bit more of that there. But of course, that is professional malpractice insurance. And this information is actually a little bit outdated. We now just switched to e-bells every week instead of twice a month. And those e-bells are just filled with resources, opportunities, professional development, things like that. We also, of course, you'll get legislative action alerts, so you'll get updates on different legislation that's coming up or going on. You also get access to our website with all the resources that are only available to members. Of course, your membership helps fund our representative in DC, who is phenomenal. Her name is Ashley Soley, and she does a lot of advocacy for us, which is phenomenal. You also have the opportunity to participate in any research that might be coming up. You get discounts to webinars, our conference, any kind of SWA events, and again, just a lot of resources. So I do want to show you a little bit what that looks like. So if you do join SWA, you'll get a username and login. And when you log in, this is what it'll look like. You'll see off to the side, our conference is coming up, and then we also have a webinar. As a member, you get half off webinars. So typically they're $30, for you would be $15. Get a decent discount on our conference, but also we do love having students come to our conferences and volunteer, and you get an additional steep discount from conferences if you do attend and volunteer as a student. So that's something to think about for next year if you're really interested in pursuing school social work. So anyway, So this is what the website will look like for you. And I want to highlight 3 things. I'll try to keep it quick. And the first is resources. So this is where you'll find all the resources that are available to members and non-members, right? You can search for it. You can filter through and look through some of these folders for all the different resources that are available to you. I think about, for myself, when I was a student and doing my thesis, my honors thesis, some of these articles and some of these resources would have been very helpful for me. And even as, I don't know how many of you are doing practicum work with, even if it's not in a school, but just with young adults or children, a lot of these resources can be easily transferable and used in, direct therapy practice with kiddos too. So a lot of information, good stuff here. Another thing I want to point out is you also have access to all of our webinars for free. So any previous webinar that we have put on, you can watch the recording of it, right? They are not available for CEs. However, it's still a great way to continue your own education, especially if something comes up that you don't have a lot of background or experience with, right? So say, for example, students with autism, if that's something that's very new to you and you want to learn more about, there's a webinar for it, right? And these just go on and on and on. We have a wonderful library full of webinars that are available to you for free. Lastly, I want to show you what's called Shelf, or well, it's through Shelf, but it's called the School Social Work Resource Library. This really is the big difference between a full typical membership with SWA and the Premier, or what students get access to. I kind of like to describe this as the Pinterest of school social work practice, because this is our massive online library of resources. And we add new resources very frequently. So you can see a little over a week ago, we had actually one of our student interns add a ton of resources on trauma, MTSS, preventing youth violence. And the great thing about it is you can find and select favorites. So that's kind of why I describe it as similar to the Pinterest of school social work, right? And you can save them in your own, on here, you can download them, things like that, so that they're easier to find later on. But this is another great resource that is available to students. Excuse me. All right, so I am looking at the time and I just want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Another great way to get involved with SWA, if you're interested, we have several committees, and excuse me, that can be a great way to get involved and sort of meet other professionals throughout the nation. Our board is very impressive. They are all so knowledgeable and wonderful and kind, and just, I've been with SWA for a little over a year now, and I've learned so much from each of them. So being involved in that way can also be an immense help, and just getting to know more people and their experiences and different experiences throughout the nation. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Give me 1 second. All right, so the last thing I want to share before we turn it over to questions, just this past summer, SWA was approved for national certification. So you may not be aware, but teachers, educators have an opportunity to become nationally certified. And it's this intense process where they have to take, I think, a few tests, submit essays, submit a recording of them teaching. I think it takes most teachers a couple years to get through that process. And then they're nationally certified. And typically what that means is, of course, like a higher higher standing, and then also a pay raise, right? So now, just this year, school social workers are eligible for national certification. And it's just something you might want to keep in mind if school social work is something that you're very passionate and serious about pursuing. I'm, of course, biased, so I think you absolutely should. But the certification models or centers around the National School Social Work model that I reviewed earlier. And those performance indicators, they were developed by a diverse team of school social work professionals and academics that represent all regions of SSWA, so all over the nation. And what you do is you are given a year to complete your certification. I am actually almost done with mine, and you are expected to write about the 9 competencies. So in the simplest of terms, you're writing 9 essays, 1 on each competency, just to kind of show your experience, your expertise, and your knowledge within that. And then it's evaluated by professionals who have been in the field for a long time. And again, it's a great certification to work towards as you progress further in your career. So just something that I wanted to make sure you were all aware of as well. So it's another good opportunity. And you do need to have your master's in social work, and you do need to have at least 4 years of experience as a school social worker. So, all right, I think that is everything that I wanted to be sure to cover. I think we have about 10 minutes left, right, Austin? So if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. If I don't know the answer, I will try my hardest to find out for you.
Yeah, you're right. We have just about 10 minutes left. Got about 45 or 50 people on here. Do we have any questions? That was a lot of good school social work information. All right, maybe if you would be willing, maybe you could put your contact email in the chat, and if they have questions at a later time, they could reach out to you. Or if you want, you could send that to me, and folks could email me, and I could facilitate that if you'd rather go that way. Absolutely.
I don't mind being reached out directly at all. That is not a problem. I'm going to send it to everyone now. I will let you know too, I think I mentioned we have our conference next week. So just so you know, if I don't get back to you right away, that's why. But typically I have a pretty quick response. And Cynthia, I think you had a question, so you can go ahead.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm an adult protective service worker, and I am out in the field constantly. And I need to know how I would go about getting in touch with a social worker. We run into a lot of teenagers that need help, but we are not allowed to, but we are able to reach out. And how would I go about without either offending or stepping over the line of contacting a social worker?
That's a great question. So I'll just share strictly from my experience. So want to make it very clear, this is just my experience, not speaking for every school social worker. I personally really love to be involved with state workers as much as possible. So anytime I know that a student has been, taken under state custody, I do a lot of work to try to figure out who their caseworker is and connect with them. I try to attend as many CFT meetings as I can because, like I said, the school social work profession, we really are the link between schools, home, and community. And if they're involved with, I mean, here we call it DCS, so I apologize if it's a different acronym where you are, but if a student is involved with DCS, then that, I mean, I want to be involved with that as well, right? And help with their case plan and make sure that their education is not being overlooked, right? So I don't think it's an insult at all. And sometimes it's hard when I can't find out who the caseworker is, to be honest. So if you have a student or a kiddo and you know what school that they attend, I really encourage you to try to make that connection if the school has a school social worker, to connect with them. And if not, even just with their teachers. I think it makes a world of difference on our end, coming from the school perspective, to know what's going on outside those school walls.
Yeah, as a school social worker myself, I always appreciated when folks would reach out. I would hear from DHS workers or even sometimes neighbors, friends of the family, etc. When we have so many students, we don't always catch everything. If they, make it under the radar with their teacher, we might not know. So yeah, I would always say reach out and let them know. I don't think I would have ever been offended.
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
Any other questions?
It was a good question, Cynthia. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. And keep in mind they're social workers, so it's. I think we're kind of an understanding group for the majority. So I mean, you're looking out for the kiddo. So do what you got to do there. All right. Well, if we do not have any other questions, I'm going to say thank you very much. Very informative. I greatly enjoyed that. For those of you who are interested, put in the chat the link for your CEUs for today. Now that we have wrapped up for today's sessions, you can go ahead and fill that out and complete it. You will do one form per day at the end of every day for this week to get your CEUs. We've also put the donation link that if you would like to make a donation, you can, not required. We suggest $10, but again, not required. Tomorrow, we will be back at 11 a.m. Tomorrow, we're going to go over licensure. There's going to be a student session, which will be open to the public, but it's going to be student focused about wanting to get a doctorate in social work. We'll cover Wellbriety, prevention and practice, and self-care. So again, we'll have 3 CEUs tomorrow. We will use the same Zoom link tomorrow. So if you want to log on tomorrow, we will start at 11 o'clock. I will hang out for about the next 5-10 minutes or so, answer any questions. But otherwise, I appreciate everybody attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Well, what's next for you, Austin?
Today?
We're all done, right, for today?
Yeah, I'm in about 10 mintes, I'm going to go grab 5 kids from 3 different schools in Tulsa.
That's when the real fun starts.
Yeah. We've started a new thing where all our kiddos are taking turns making dinner. So tonight's the 8-year-old's night. So I'm going to stand by with a, smoke detector and a fire extinguisher, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, that's actually pretty exciting. That's a great idea. I don't know that I could force my children to do that. So the fact that they're willing is great. Yeah,
I found out really early in parenting that my parenting style was not asking. It was like, well, if you want to eat, I mean, do what you got to do, man. But yeah, they're all pretty well put together. There's a few that I'm worried about. It's going to be a less feeding themselves, but yeah, for the most part, it's pretty good. I think today went well. I was really impressed with the number of people. Capella, I really enjoyed your presentation. I need your PowerPoint for the CEUs, but I'd actually like to include it in one of my courses that I do just for some information. And then I can reach out and look at joining that organization too, just because it's a near and dear thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of those documents that I had shared and referenced, those are all free to the public. So absolutely, please feel free to use those in your classes, whatever works. And yeah, I really appreciate that. I haven't presented in a while, so I was feeling a little rusty, and I really appreciate the opportunity and this whole week that you're putting on for your students is phenomenal. I love that. I love that idea. And
yeah, we've got lots of faculty and staff who supported. I think we're gonna have 18 speakers over the 3 days, maybe 17 speakers over the 3 days. So it'll be great. And we do this every spring. So if it's an option for you, let's get back together next spring. I'd love to keep kind of making sure that school social work is in the forefront and gets to be heard about by social work students.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to keep doing it every year. If there's any kind of feedback that you have for me or that you hear from some of the attendees, things I can do better, it's something that I definitely need to keep, please just let me know. I'm more than happy to hear it. Yeah,
no worries at all. I think it went really well. And I see your comment in the chat. No worries on those allergies either, because it's blooming season around here too. So like everything taking off. It's a rough week for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I was formerly a therapist placed in a school by a local agency. And so like Austin, it's kind of like one of those things where I have a lot of familiarity with the school system and what that looks like. And so it was really nice to kind of see some of these other membership options and the various things that you were talking about. So thanks so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Bye. Austin, thank you so much.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really, really enjoyed it. I did. So thank you. You have a great day.
You as well. Bye.
All right, take care. All right. Well, if nobody else has a question, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording and end the session. Again, we'll be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So use the same link to log back in. We will see you all tomorrow. Thank you.